Thank you, Julie. I'll take this off. Julie?
Yes, you can pull it off if you want. I didn't know if you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've been here since 2007. There was nothing here when I came. Nothing. And my parents were living in Forest Hills and they couldn't take care of themselves anymore. So I said, this would be a great place for them to come to live, for several reasons. Forest Hills was way too far away, and my brother and I could not manage the trip anymore. Second, my mother couldn't take care of herself anymore, and me, the daughter, lived 6 blocks away. So I said, this is a great opportunity for you to come live near me, but not with me, because my house had too many steps. So they were here from 2008. My mom passed away in 2017 and my dad in 2013. And if you're ever walking down the hall to apartment 145, there's a little plaque that I put up outside recognizing that they lived there for the amount of time. Anybody ever notice that? Well, if you go past by, come and look.
Okay.
So I was asked to speak about Kristallnacht. And I know you all know what that is, but if you don't see, this is, I'll have Julie bring it around. You can pass this around. This was my mom. And my family of assisted living, it's my grandson.
Okay.
My family. My grandson was. Did you want me to pass that around? Yes, my grandson grew up riding the elevator here and running up and down the hall. And he thought that any nice little old lady, he would go with them they wanted to give him candy. And when he moved in, he never saw an elevator before, and then because he lived in a house, and he pushed the button in the elevator and the fire department came. So, and every time he comes here, someone reminds him of that. Now he's a bar mitzvah boy. So, I'm going to start by talking about my mom's story. So now you know why I'm here and who I am. My mother was born May 24th, 1922 in Frankfurt, Germany. Anybody here from Germany? Okay. My mother was Johanna. My father was Jakob. They lived in Frankfurt, very comfortable life. My mom went to yeshiva. She came from a very, very religious family. And life was good. They had to live with my grandmother Fanny because housing was very short. And the other grandmother, Matilda, lived next door. And wouldn't you know it, my name is Marsha Shapiro. So I was named after the two grandmothers, because they were fighting when I was born to name it after me. So Marsha after Matilda, and Fanny after Faye after Fanny. And both of those grandmothers perished in concentration camp. So my mother went to a school called Samsel Rabel Hirsch in Frankfurt, and that translates to a yeshiva in Washington Heights called Breuer. Anybody ever hear of Breuer? Samsel Rabel Hirsch?
Yes,
That's where she went to school. It was a very progressive school. She learned English, French, German, and Hebrew. And in that time it was very progressive because they were educating girls in a very similar way that they were educating boys. So that was very progressive. And my great-grandmother, Fanny, was a kosher caterer. She made the bar mitzvahs, the weddings, and all those things that people wanted for a cook. Now, my mother was a terrible cook, because she said she never learned how to cook because her grandmother made everything. Now, I must have skipped a generation because I'm a very good cook, and I like to cook. So when she was young, my mother had scarlet fever. And in those days, there were no antibiotics. So they had to take her every day to the hospital to have her ear drained. And it was a very bad thing because she had to go to get her ear drained even on Shabbat. And since she came from an Orthodox family, the rabbi said, you must go because we have to take care of you. But don't let anybody see you. So she had to walk, she always said she had to walk a mile to get the bus so they could take her to the hospital. And then on the way home, they had to do the same thing. And so Uncle Fanny, the kosher cook, was a caterer. She went one summer to cook in like a bungalow colony in the country. And I'm going to tell you about how that worked out later. That's how she met my father. And my mother always said Fanny made a lot of money. She had a lot of jewelry. But guess what? It didn't matter because she went to concentration camp and she was killed. And my mother always said, what did the money do for them? My grandfather was Yaakov, and he worked for a sports newspaper. He was a printer. And my mother said the reason she had such good care was because he belonged to a union and he had insurance. But that didn't make a difference because if she had to go to a Jewish hospital, even back then, she couldn't go to a regular hospital. So she was happy. She went to school, she liked to read, she learned how to swim because the rabbi in the school told my grandparents that she was too fat, so that she had to learn how to swim. And in those days, they put you in a pool and tied a rope around you, and you walked up, and your rope went up and down, and you had to keep moving. But to the very end, she became a good swimmer, and she always liked to swim, even when she came here. But all that life ended on September 15th, 1935. Does anybody know why that date was so important? No, 1935. September 15th, 1935. Some laws were passed. Does that ring a bell? Nuremberg laws, that's right. You win the prize. All of a sudden, my grandfather was making a good living, could not go to work. He was fired. And not only that, all the Jews were stripped of their citizenship. They were no longer considered citizens of Germany. So he was very fortunate in the sense that people from the newspaper where he worked in the union helped him get a visa to come here to America. He came by himself. He left his family, my mother, and his mother, and his son, and he went off to America. And he was pretty educated. Being a printer in those days in Germany, you had to know how to read and write really well because a lot of it was done by hand. And when he came here, you think he got a job in a newspaper? No. What kind of job do you think he could get? Delivery? No, that's a good answer. No, he became a line chef in a restaurant in Yorkville, New York, in a dairy restaurant making salads. And that's how he made his living. So that brings us to, my mom was 16 years old and she lived a comfortable life. And in her building, there was like a brownstone building, she explained to me, that had a lot of apartments. And in those days in Europe, the apartment building was taken care of by a caretaker. And the caretaker's name was Frau Schultz. Frau Schultz was not Jewish. But my mother always said Frau Schultz was very kind to her and her brother and always tried to sneak them candy. Then November 9th to 10th came, in 1938 came Kristallnacht. So all of a sudden they heard a lot of noise. There was soldiers in the streets, there was glass breaking, and all of a sudden she said the Nazis came to the door. and said to Frau Schultz, "Where are the dirty Jews?" And Frau Schultz said, "There are no dirty Jews here," because she had hidden them in the root cellar. And as a very fortunate thing, she told my mother, "You have to get out of here. The trains are at the station. They're going to take you away." Unfortunately, I'm not really sure how it happened. My grandfather was able to get the necessary visas, and my mother arrived here on her 17th birthday on a ship with her brother and her mother. Everybody else was left behind, and she never saw them again. So my mother arrived here, and she was a very educated little girl, never worked a day in her life. And when she got there to America, they said, "You're going to be a nanny to some kids." So they shipped, because they needed the money. So they shipped her off, she said, to work in Rockaway, New Jersey, for these two boys who were horrible. And that's what she had to do in order to survive. Then they were reunited, and she was living in the Bronx. My father was living in Washington Heights. But my father was working in a cleaning store in Washington Heights. And my grandmother saw him and said, "Carrie," I forgot to tell you, her name was Carrie. My mother's name was Carrie, her Hebrew name was Kayla. And I also forgot to tell you that when she was born, my grandfather had to go to the registry to register her. And he said, "You can't name the child Carrie, that's my dog's name." And he said, "We're going to put down her name as Carolina Teresa." So she became Carolina Teresa Meyer. Nice name for a nice Jewish girl. But that's probably why I can't find her birth certificate, because I don't know what they were calling her. So my father and my mother met. And it turns out, remember I told you that my grandmother had worked in a bungalow colony as a chef? Well, it turns out that my father's Uncle Moses was there. So there was a connection, and my grandmother said, "Okay, he's a nice guy. We know his family. They're okay." And my mother goes, "But I don't really want to date someone that wears glasses. That's not what I want." She was 20 years old. Well, that being said, they decided to date. And my father always told the story that the first Rosh Hashanah, because he was still religious at that time, he walked from Washington Heights to the Bronx, where my mother was living, to have dinner at their house. And he always said, "I hate that fish you made." He told that story every year. But he ate it, and they were married on June 27, 1942, right after my mother turned 21. And during the war, my father worked in a munitions factory making those metal boxes. That's what he did. And 4 years later, my brother was born. And 4 years after that, I was born. So I always wondered if I was going to be, they hadn't met, they hadn't had a war, would I be a little German girl? I don't know. I don't know. And my father couldn't afford an engagement ring, so he had a bracelet made with her initials on it, CM, which I have, that I'm wearing today. And years later, she did have a ring. I do have her ring, but this is all he could afford. And he told the story that they went on a bus somewhere for their honeymoon up in the mountains. And they came back and they had like $28. Because it was wartime and there was no wedding. So she said the only gifts they got were flowers. And she borrowed a wedding dress from a friend. But, you had to make your life over. And since my father had been working in cleaning stores, he ended up being the owner of 2 cleaning stores, one in Greenwich Village and one in Stuyvesant Town, if anybody knows that. They settled in Washington Heights. Anybody know anything about Washington Heights? Yes, Washington Heights? Yes. I was brought up in Washington Heights. And at that time, Washington Heights, I realized later, was like a shtetl. There was 20,000 refugees, all who banded together to form new communities. There was a shul on every corner, a kosher bakery on every corner, a kosher butcher on every corner, and that's how we were brought up. And I'm still friends with, a lot of the people, the kids that I grew up with. And I think it's very important to tell this story because I think now people are saying Holocaust didn't happen, or maybe it wasn't so bad. But I think it's really, really important for people to know that the Holocaust really did happen. My father had a different story. Do you want to hear his story? Okay. My father was born in a very small town called Langendiebach. His father, Langendiebach, it's not there anymore. Now it's called something else after the war.
Where? What country?
In Germany.
Oh, Germany. Okay, sorry.
Also in Germany. He was one of 3 boys. He was the eldest of 3 boys. And in 1937, the Nazis came and took him and his brother to Buchenwald. It wasn't a work camp, they had to build it. So that's what they were doing there. They built it. And he was very fortunate. At that time, he had relatives in England who, we don't know exactly how, got him released. And he and his brother went home to his mom, who was a widow, and living alone with her mom in a nice house. Still had a business, and said, "You can come with us. You can come with us. We're going to the Isle of Man, but we have to leave in 24 hours. Otherwise, they're going to pick us up again." So, my grandmother Paula made a decision. She had to make a decision. You ever hear the movie Sophie's Choice? This is the same kind of thing. It was her choice. Was she going to go with her 2 boys to the Isle of Man, or she was going to stay because her mom, Jenny Marks, was not allowed to leave. So what did she decide to do? Yeah, she stayed. She stayed with her mom, and that was the last time he ever saw his mother. So he and his brother went to the Isle of Man, where they were registered as German alien spies. And they couldn't work, and food was hard to come by, so they had to figure out what they were going to do. They couldn't stay there. So my father had an aunt here, Tante Rosa, who I remember, who sent for him. There was only enough paperwork for one of them. Again, there's a choice. Who gets to go? Who gets to stay? So they picked my father because he was the eldest, and he passed all the physical tests, and my Uncle Max didn't because he had very, very bad eyesight. So my father came to Washington Heights and lived with Tante Rosa and started to work in the, where did he work? He worked in the
Cleaning store.
Cleaning store. And that's where he met my mother. My Uncle Max, he went to Toronto, married my aunt, and has 4 children, and now I have a branch. I must have 50 relatives in Toronto. The interesting thing about all this is, until I was 13 years old, and we went on a family trip to Toronto, he never told me about that he'd been in a camp. I knew nothing. So when my brother and I arrived at my uncle's house in Toronto, it was a big family gathering. He had 4 kids, they had a whole bunch of people over, and the 2 brothers were talking about being in a concentration camp. And I looked at my brother, and he looked at me. Who knew about this? My cousins all knew, but I didn't know anything. And my uncle, he told me that in order to keep them working, when they finished building for the day, they had to take stones and put them here, and when they were finished, move the stones over there to keep them very weak and tired. But he never wanted to talk about it. So I was very shocked to learn that he had been in a camp, even though I knew a lot of people from my friends and from the neighborhood, the people that were, but I just didn't know. Fast forward to, let's say, 2000, they lived in Washington Heights, then they moved to Forest Hills, and I didn't. I got married and I moved out to New Jersey, as did my brother. And it was too far for us to go to Washington Heights, to go to Forest Hills. And every Sunday I was going and schlepping the groceries. My mother wasn't well. It was getting too much. We hired people to take care of my parents. My mother never liked anybody. She kept firing everybody. So I came and put down a deposit here on the Jewish home. I said, I'm going to put a deposit down. It's like having, like when you buy a house, I'm putting down a deposit. My father said, I'm not coming. My mother said, I'm going. So this was going on, and the situation in Forest Hills was getting worse. Then all of a sudden, my father goes, what are we going to do with the furniture? What are we taking? What are we not taking? So we packed them up. And a lot of the stuff ended up that I keep in my house. I have my mother's dishes, I have my grandmother's dishes, my daughter doesn't want them. We know that story. And so they moved here. And I'm telling you that this was the final years of their life, and they were here. They were very, 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 very happy. Isn't that right, Julie?
Yes.
They were very, very happy. My mother was the mayor. Everybody who knows who Nancy is, the social worker? When Nancy wanted to know something, what was going on, she asked my mother to find out, because my mother was like the mayor. She knew everybody and everything that was going on here.
They're why we started the personal shopper service.
The personal shopper service? My mother, that was a person, Julie reminded me of a very good story. They have a personal shopper system here, right?
Yes.
Oh, no, my mother didn't like that. My brother had to come from an hour away and bring her the case of water she wanted, and I had to come and buy whatever she needed. No personal shopper for her, it was only me. So this was a very good quality of life, and I'm very grateful to the Jewish home for the years that they had my parents living here, and they were very, very happy here. Avi was here, Julie was here, Nancy, the social worker, is here, and I still feel connected here because a lot of the people who worked here when my mom was here, parents were here, are still here today. Gina was here, and it feels like a homecoming. So I'm happy to be able to talk to you about my story, and I feel that you're very lucky to be in such a good place and being taken care of in such a loving and kind manner. I've been to Germany one day. I miss your gas. No German cars, no German anything. That's who I am. My mother, the Frankfurt, do you know what the birthright trip is for kids who go to Israel?
Yes.
Well, they had a birthright trip for my mom to go back to Germany, and they did go. But she said nothing was the same because all the buildings that she knew were not there anymore, and she really didn't recognize anything. And my father went back to his small town to see the cemetery where his father was buried, and that was very emotional, but I haven't been. Thank you for asking. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes, sir. Yes.
I was born in White.
You were.
My parents moved when I was 2 years old to Boston.
There you go. I grew up on 175th Street. 75th Street.
No, in Forest Hills.
Oh, they lived on 67th Road. You know where Lazar's Meat Market is?
No.
Knishkanash, they
I
live
lived
there.
in Forest Hills High School.
Oh, Forest Hills High School, that's it, yes. I know where that is. Very nice, very nice neighborhood. Anybody else have any questions? You lived in Forest Hills, where did you live? All right, who grew up in the city, in New York City? You did? Brooklyn, okay. Let's hear it for Brooklyn. Anybody? Kew Garden Hills. And where did you? The Bronx. I taught in the Bronx. It was my first teaching job. Jerome Avenue, on 183rd off of Fordham Road. Helen Parker. Yes?
I grew up in Kew Garden Hills.
Where?
First started in town, and then Kew Garden Hills.
Kew Garden Hills. A lot of Queens people here.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
What was the name of Briarwood,
Oh, it's very beautiful there.
yes.
Very nice.
Then with the expressway under my feet,
Expressway.
with an exit and entrance right there.
Well, at least you got to where you had to go.
Very, very convenient.
Very convenient. All right, anybody else have any, I just want to tell you also, to show you, if you can't see the pictures, that, this is my these are my grandmother's candlesticks. These are my candlesticks, or my mom's, and I use them. And this is the ladle that says Paula Haynes, my mother's mother, who died. I got custody of the ladle. And I use it on the holidays, even though the ladle is bigger than the soup bowls. I think it's important that I show my grandchildren how everything works and to use it. And my grandson at his bar mitzvah did speak about, because he knew my father here. He was at my grandson's bris, he was 94. And my mom was at my granddaughter's bris, and her name is Sarah, and Sarah's named after my father, Sidney. When my father came here, he found out he had a bad name, he had to change it. In Germany, his name was Sally, S-A-L-L-Y. And when he came here, everybody told him it was a girl's name. So Sally became Sidney. And then someone said to me, well, didn't he go to court to change it? I said, no, nobody did that in those days. So that is all the things I need to have to tell you. Thank you for listening. Anybody have any? And I hope you all have a nice dinner. Who has an early? There's not 2 cities to dinner?
Yes.
Who has early dinner? Who has late dinner? Okay, enjoy your dinner.
Thank you, Marsha.